Hi, my name is Emily Sherman, and welcome to the Review of Junior Year podcast. So I'm here with juniors Maeve McGuire and Paul Kraut, and today we're just gonna, kind of talk about what we learned junior year and sort of like how it went, and both information in the classroom and also outside the classroom, and also talk about standardized testing. So Maeve, would you like to say anything?
What I learned about standardized testing was it's not a measure of knowledge whatsoever, but it's more about techniques and how it's definitely not a measure of your intelligence. People who, do not work hard can still get 1500s just because they have a fancy tutor who knows all the tricks. Meanwhile, people who are really, really smart don't always get the best grades. Also, just junior year, I've learned to, cry and study at the same time.
Same though.
I know. I remember vividly, it was in November or something. I was just crying, and I had 3 tests, and I was just like, I am doing okay, But it's really horrible. There's just so much pressure, and you have everything due at once. Especially when you take multiple APs, there's so much coursework. So right now I have 4 projects. I have 20 tabs opened right now. And also iMovie. So my computer almost is on the verge of collapsing. Sorry. And then, I love all my teachers. I do, but sometimes it's just difficult because you have to stay really committed to them, but at the same time you have 7 or 8 different teachers to worry about.
There were multiple points this year where there was just hi. So there were multiple points this year where I had physically too much work that just I could not do. Not that I didn't want to, it was impossible to do it all. So I had to work out ways of coming in early to school and doing it tomorrow. I think most of what I learned this year is just I guess manipulating other things in my life so that school, working what I can do for school, whether that be emailing teachers for extensions, which I never did prior to this year, or focusing on my ACT for a week and not doing my homework outside of school and doing my homework during my free periods. It was just a lot of, I guess just figuring out what work I had to prioritize over other work so that I wasn't just trying to do everything. Because I think if I hadn't tried to focus on particular things at a time, I would have just been completely swamped and not been able to do any work correctly.
Definitely agree with that. I definitely had to prioritize a lot this year and could not just come home and do everything that needed to be done in a few hours. There was just simply too much work. But a lot of what goes down junior year is very academic. So I feel it would kind of be interesting to talk about something you learned that didn't necessarily have to do with school or standardized testing or sitting at a desk, something that you learned maybe about yourself or others through maybe a school related activity or even something outside of school.
Well, I think Mrs. Charles in our AP Art History class has really taught me to, not just the academics, but also more about other people and myself, and especially about art. And I don't know, Mrs. Charles' passion just radiates throughout every single person in the classroom, and I have such a deep appreciation of her passion and how much she cares about others. So what I've learned from her is to don't split the small stuff, compromise, and just as a leader to always take into account every single person, even the person in the back. Everyone has a voice, everyone has a thought, And Mrs. Charles always finds time to talk to every single one of her students, which I find admirable. And then what we also learned about, like, we went to museums. All of our field trips were super beneficial because we actually applied our knowledge outside the classroom, which is really exciting because, sometimes you're in bio and you're like, oh, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and you're like, you don't see it. Yeah, what I've learned in high school, and you don't see it, but you can learn about Jackson Pollock and you can actually see it, or Callow, or Kandinsky or Klimt, or da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So, I just find it amazing that people, not only do you're more culturally aware, but also you're able to see it.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of stuff that we did this year had to do with what we learned, with applying stuff outside the classroom, especially with AP Psych and AP Lang. I noticed a lot of things, in argument, in just how people act, that I don't think I really picked up on before, which I think is cool. And about myself, I think I just learned that I cannot trust myself to manage my time well. I need to have ways of forcing myself to do things by a certain time, because if I don't do that, I will just be wow, I have a lot of work to do. I should probably just go on my laptop and watch Netflix. I think I get overwhelmed very easily, so I had to make strategies and techniques that worked for me as far as managing my time well.
So I also took AP Psych and AP Lang, and I thought what you said was really interesting about noticing things in real life, because that definitely happened to me, and I feel those classes specifically kind of opened up my eyes to the world a little bit, just to see how people interact with one another, and even how I act too. And even though that was an academic concept, I do think that there are some things we learned in classrooms that were just really interesting and really shaped the way I learned this year. So do you guys have any advice for incoming juniors, or people who are going to be taking AP classes their first time, possibly sophomores with AP World History?
Definitely don't overwork yourself. I know freshman year and sophomore year, if you work yourself so much, you're definitely not going to be motivated junior year. I remember, I pushed myself a lot as an underclassman, and now as a junior, I'm already burnt out, even though I haven't graduated at all. So it's just being able to manage your time and have that time to hang out with your friends, or chill. Definitely sleep at least 8 hours. Please don't stay up till 1 a.m.
That's another thing. I feel this year I learned more about my teachers being more understanding. I feel in past years I was a lot more afraid of my teachers, and this year, if I felt there was something I really could not get done by the deadline, I felt more comfortable talking to my teachers. So I definitely think that is something important from this year. I mean, I also think that this is very specific, but schedule your junior meeting very early in the year, because I did not, and now my junior meeting is next week, which is the absolute end of the school year, which is kind of stressful. So don't do that to yourself. Make sure you schedule it early.
Even though it's a lot.
Also, about standardized testing, if you're an underclassman, I would not start studying that early. Because my personal, I started studying the fall of my sophomore year, right as school started. And by the time I took my test in April, and I was studying for a year and a half. And I did end up getting the score I wanted, but I was so burnt out, and it translated into my schoolwork as well. I was just so done. Mm-hmm. And I definitely think that hurt me a lot. Yeah, and socially, I think a big thing is to not abandon just doing unstructured things with your friends, because I think a lot of this year I ended up doing that because I was I have my SAT prep Saturday, and I have to go to Chambers, so it was just, I ignored a lot of my friendships, I think. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's not that I'm not as close with those people, but I think that I would have had a lot easier time going through this year if I had just had some more unstructured time to be content with life.
Yeah. I like what you said about unstructured time, because actually for AP Lang this year we had to read The Overachievers, and
That book made me so stressed out.
yeah. And they talked about how, like, when you're not doing anything junior year, it can feel like weird or like stressful. So that's not true at all, and you should definitely make sure to have leisure time. So thank you for listening to this podcast, and good luck throughout your high school career.
You're gonna do well.